The massive holographic display flickered in the war room of the Galactic Council's flagship. Admiral Zixthan studied the three-dimensional map of known space with 4 of his 8 eyes, while the other 4 scanned the faces of his commanders. The map was beautiful in its completeness. Thousands of star systems glowing like jewels, trade routes pulsing with activity, and territorial boundaries marked in precise geometric lines. But there was a problem, a dark spot, a region where the map simply stopped. "Explain this to me again," Admiral Zixthan rumbled, his serpentine neck coiling with irritation. His species, the Veltar, had ruled the galactic core for 3,000 years. They were used to having answers. Commander Krellix stepped forward, her crystalline form catching the light from the holodisplay. As a member of the silicon-based Threndai, she processed information faster than most organic species, which made her hesitation all the more disturbing. "Sir, we call it the Silent Zone, roughly 200 light-years across. Our long range. Sensors detect nothing. No energy signatures, no subspace communications, no gravitational anomalies that would suggest advanced civilization. Nothing." The Admiral's voice carried the weight of disbelief. "In 200 light-years of space?" "Well, not exactly nothing, sir." Krellix's form dimmed slightly, the equivalent of a nervous gulp. "There are planets, dozens of them. Some appear to be inhabited, but they're primitive. Stone Age, civilizations at most. We've classified the entire region as a backwater sector, hardly worth our attention." Captain Morden, a hulking member of the warrior race known as the Korthak, snorted through his tusks. "Primitive worlds are perfect for resource extraction. Why haven't we moved in?" The Admiral's eyes narrowed. That was an excellent question. The Galactic Council had been expanding outward for millennia, absorbing lesser civilizations, strip mining, dead worlds, establishing outposts wherever profit could be made. It was what they did. It was who they were. So why had they never touched the Silent Zone? "Sir?" A new voice spoke up from the communication station. It was Ensign Telmoth, young, even by his species standards. "I've been reviewing our historical records. We have gaps." "What kind of gaps?" Admiral Zixthan slithered closer to the communications console. "Every time someone suggests exploring the Silent Zone, there's a note in the records that the mission was postponed, or deemed unnecessary, or assigned to someone else. But when I try to trace those reassignments..." "Yes?" "They disappear, sir. The officers assigned to Silent Zone missions just vanish from our personnel records, as if they never existed." The war room fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Admiral Zixthan felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The Galactic Council controlled over 40,000 star systems. They had fleets capable of cracking planets and weapons that could ignite suns. They had encountered and conquered over 200 different species. But this was something new. "Sir." Commander Krellix spoke again, her voice carrying a strange resonance. "There's something else. I've been analyzing the border regions, around the Silent Zone, the areas where our territory meets, whatever's in there. And ships have been disappearing. Not many, maybe 1 or 2 every few years. We always attributed it to pirates or navigation errors or equipment failures. But looking at the pattern..." She manipulated the holodisplay, and dozens of red dots appeared along the edges of the Silent Zone. Each dot represented a ship that had vanished without a trace. "How long has this been happening?" Admiral Zixthan asked. "According to our records, about 300 years, sir." The Admiral's blood ran cold. 300 years of disappearing ships, 300 years of avoiding a region of space for reasons no one could quite remember, 300 years of treating a 200 light-year sphere of space as if it were invisible. "Commander Krellix," he said slowly, "prepare a reconnaissance fleet. I want to know what's in that Silent Zone." "Sir, with respect, perhaps we should consult with the High Council first. This seems like the kind of decision that requires..." "No." The Admiral's voice cut through her objection like a plasma blade. "Whatever's in there has been making us ignore it for 3 centuries. The High Council would probably just tell us to forget about it and focus on more pressing matters. We go now, while we still remember why we wanted to go in the first place. As the crew rushed to prepare for departure, Admiral Zixton stared at the dark spot on the galactic map. Something was hiding in that silent zone, something that could make an entire galactic civilization forget it existed, and they were about to find out what it was. The reconnaissance fleet launched 6 hours later, 5 battle cruisers, 2 science vessels, and Admiral Zixton's flagship. As they engaged their faster-than-light drives and headed toward the silent zone, none of them noticed the small, unremarkable ship that had been watching from a distance. A ship with hull markings that would have been completely unrecognizable to any member of the Galactic Council. Human markings. Chapter 2. First Contact Protocols. The human ship Defiant drifted through the void like a predator watching its prey. Captain Sarah Chen sat in the command chair, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the approaching Galactic Council fleet. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency that came from years of operating in hostile territory. Range to contact? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 47,000 kilometers in closing, Captain, replied Lieutenant Commander James Park from the sensor station. 7 ships total. Configuration matches the intelligence reports from the Kepler incident. Chen nodded grimly. The Kepler incident. 3 months ago, a Galactic Council patrol had stumbled across one of humanity's outer research stations. The station had been evacuated and destroyed, but not before the aliens had gotten a good look at human technology. It was only a matter of time before they came looking for more. Weapon status? All systems green, Captain. Plasma torpedoes loaded, railguns charged, and the quantum disruption field is ready to deploy on your order. This from Commander Elena Vasquez, the ship's tactical officer. Like most of humanity's military leaders, she had scars, physical and otherwise, from the early days of the Silent War. Dr. Reeves, are you picking up anything unusual from their communications? Dr. Marcus? Reeves looked up from his xenolinguistics station, his weathered face creased with concentration. At 63, he was one of the few humans who remembered when first contact protocols were about peaceful exchanges and cultural understanding. Now they were about survival. Standard Galactic Council chatter, Captain. But there's something different about this fleet. Their communication patterns suggest confusion, uncertainty. They're not operating under normal invasion protocols. Meaning they don't know what they're looking for. This isn't a planned assault on human territory. This is a reconnaissance mission into what they call the Silent Zone. Captain Chen allowed herself a thin smile. The Silent Zone. Humanity's greatest achievement, and the Galactic Council's blind spot. For 300 years, human psionicists had been subtly influencing the collective unconscious of every species they encountered, making them simply forget that human space existed. It was elegant, it was invisible, and until recently it had been perfect. Captain, Lieutenant Park called out. They're changing course. Looks like they're heading for the Proxima system. Chen's blood turned to ice water. Proxima Centauri, humanity's first colony outside the Sol system, home to 12 million people, including her younger brother and his family. How long until they reach Proxima? At their current speed? 16 hours, ma'am. 16 hours. Not enough time to evacuate the system, even if they had the ships for it. Not enough time to prepare a proper defense. But maybe, just maybe, enough time to remind the Galactic Council why their maps stopped at human space. Helm. Plot and intercept. Course maximum stealth approach. Captain, Commander Vasquez spoke up. 1 ship against 7? Even with our technological advantages, those aren't good odds. We're not going to fight them, Commander. We're going to talk to them. The bridge fell silent. In the 3 centuries since first contact, humans had spoken to the Galactic Council exactly once. It hadn't gone well. Ma'am? Lieutenant Park's voice carried a note of disbelief. Captain Chen stood up, smoothing down her uniform. Dr. Reeves, how's your Veltar? The xenolinguist blinked in surprise. Rusty, but functional. Captain, you can't be serious. First contact. Protocols were abandoned for good reason. These species, they don't negotiate, they conquer. Maybe. But something's changed. You said it yourself. They're confused, uncertain. They've broken through the psychic barriers that have kept them away from human space for 3 centuries. That means either our psionicists are losing their touch or what? Or someone on that fleet is strong enough to resist mental manipulation. Someone we need to talk to before they lead the entire Galactic Council to humanity's doorstep. She turned to the communications officer. Ensign Rodriguez, prepare a tight beam transmission to the lead ship. Standard first contact package, translated, into Veltar, Threndai, and Korthak. Yes, ma'am. What message do you want to send? Captain Chen stared at the tactical display, watching the 7 alien ships move inexorably toward human space, toward her brother's family, toward everything humanity had built in the shadows. Tell them we need to talk. Admiral Zixthan was reviewing long-range sensor data when the impossible happened. His communications officer, a nervous young Veltar named Sub-Commander Thexral, looked up from his console with an expression of pure bewilderment. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. From where? That's the impossible part, sir. It's coming from empty space. Our sensors show nothing in that vector except background radiation. Commander Krelix moved to the communications station, her crystalline form pulsing with analytical energy. Impossible. No known stealth technology can fool our sensors completely. Play the transmission, Admiral Zixthan ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something none of them had ever seen before. A bipedal creature with smooth, relatively hairless skin, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a single head. Its eyes were dark and intelligent, and when it spoke, the universal translator provided a clear rendering in Galactic Standard. Greetings, Admiral. Zixthan of the Galactic Council vessel, Dominion's Edge. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the human starship Defiant. We need to talk. The war room erupted in confused chatter. Captain Morden was the first to recover his voice. Human? What the hell is a human? But Admiral Zixthan was studying the creature on the screen with growing fascination. There was something familiar about it, something that tugged at the edges of his memory, as if he had seen this species before, in dreams or half-remembered nightmares. How do you know my name? He asked. The human female smiled, and Admiral Zixthan felt a chill run down his spine. It was not a friendly expression. We know a lot about you, Admiral. We know you're heading for a system you call, let me check my notes, Proxima. We know you think it's inhabited by primitive Stone Age creatures, and we know you're about to make a very serious mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind that starts wars, Admiral. The kind that ends civilizations. But it doesn't have to. Like I said, we need to talk. Admiral Zixthan looked around his war room at the faces of his officers. They were all staring at the screen with the same expression he imagined was on his own face. Complete and utter confusion mixed with a growing sense of dread. Very well, Captain Chen. Where would you suggest we meet? Oh, that's easy, Admiral. Just look out your forward viewport. Commander Krelix rushed to the main viewport and peered out into space. For a moment, she saw nothing but stars. Then, the air itself seemed to shimmer, and suddenly there was a ship floating less than a kilometer away. It was sleek, angular, and completely alien. Its hull was a dark metallic color that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. It had no visible weapons, but somehow that made it more threatening, not less. Most disturbing of all was the complete absence of any energy signature. Their sensors still showed nothing but empty space. Impressive, Admiral Zixthan murmured. How long have you been following us? Since you left Council space, Admiral. We've been watching you for a very long time. The Admiral felt pieces of a very large puzzle clicking into place in his mind. The silent zone, the disappearing ships, the missing officers, the inexplicable gaps in their records. You've been hiding, he said. It wasn't a question. We've been surviving, Captain Chen corrected. There's a difference, but now you're here, and our survival depends on what happens in the next few hours. So I'll ask you again, Admiral. Are you willing to talk? Admiral Zixthan made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Prepare a shuttle. I'm going aboard their ship. Chapter 3. The Price of Forgetting. The interior of the human ship was a study in controlled aggression. Admiral Zixthan followed Captain Chen through corridors lined with what were obviously weapon ports, past crew members who watched him with the cold, calculating eyes of born predators. Everything was clean, efficient, and utterly lethal. Your ship is impressive, he said as they walked. Thank you. Though I should mention that what you're seeing is our oldest design. We've made some improvements over the past 3 centuries. They entered what appeared to be a conference room. The furniture was clearly designed for human physiology, but someone had thoughtfully provided a coiled platform that would accommodate Admiral Zixthan's serpentine form. A gesture of courtesy that somehow made him even more nervous. Captain. Chen sat across from him, her hands folded on the table. Up close, Admiral Zixthan could see that she was younger than he had initially thought, probably middle-aged by human standards, but her eyes held the weight of someone who had seen much war. Let me start with the obvious question, he said. What are humans? We're what you might call a young species. We achieved faster-than-light travel about 400 years ago. First contact with the Galactic Council came roughly 50 years later. That's impossible. The Council maintains detailed records of all first contact scenarios. We would remember. Admiral Zixthan stopped mid-sentence. The implications hit him like a physical blow. You make us forget, he whispered. Captain Chen nodded grimly. Not us, specifically. We have individuals with certain abilities. Psionicists, we call them. They can influence thought patterns, suppress memories, redirect attention. For 3 centuries, they've been making sure that every time someone from the Galactic Council looks at human space, they see nothing interesting. The silent zone. Exactly. Admiral Zixthan felt a mixture of admiration and horror. But why? Why hide instead of making contact? The Council welcomes new species. We could have shared technology, culture, resources. Captain Chen's laugh was bitter and cold. Admiral, let me tell you about our first contact with the Galactic Council. She pressed a control on the table, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed a star system with several inhabited planets. This was the Tau Ceti system. Human population, 800 million. It was our second major colony after Proxima Centauri. Beautiful worlds, thriving cities, centers of art and learning. The bow display shifted, showing images of vast cities with gleaming spires, orbital habitats, and ships moving between the planets. In 2387, a Galactic Council exploration fleet discovered Tau Ceti. We were excited. Finally, we thought, we would join the galactic community. We would learn, grow, contribute to something greater than ourselves. The images changed again. Now Admiral Zixthan was looking at burning cities, shattered orbital stations, and ships fleeing through space. The Council fleet was under the command of Admiral Vorthak of the Korthak Imperium. His orders were to assess the new species for integration potential. Do you know what that means, Admiral? Admiral Zixthan's blood turned cold. He knew exactly what it meant. Every species in the Galactic Council had gone through the same process. Integration assessment involves determining whether a species is suitable for membership in the Council, or whether they should be managed as a resource. That's a polite way of putting it. Admiral Vorthak determined that humans were too aggressive, too independent, and too technologically advanced to make good subjects. So he recommended that we be classified as a hostile species and dealt with accordingly. The holographic display now showed something that made Admiral Zixthan want to look away. Massive orbital bombardment platforms reducing planets to molten slag. Evacuation ships being hunted down and destroyed. Entire civilizations wiped out in a matter of days. 800 million people, Admiral. Gone in less than a week. Men, women, children, entire families turned to vapor because we weren't suitable for integration. Captain Chen's voice was perfectly calm, but Admiral Zixthan could see the fury burning in her eyes. That's when we learned an important lesson about the Galactic Council. You don't welcome new species, you conquer them, enslave them, or exterminate them. There is no fourth option. But surely not all council species. Really? Captain Chen leaned forward. Tell me, Admiral, how many member species of the Galactic Council joined voluntarily? How many were given a real choice? Admiral Zixthon opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. In truth, he couldn't think of a single species that had joined the Council as equals. They were all either conquered peoples serving as laborers and soldiers, or smaller species that had surrendered in exchange for protection. His own people, the Veltar, had risen to power by being better at conquest than anyone else. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled, the weak served, and the galaxy continued to function, wasn't it? I can see you're thinking, Admiral, that's good. Most council species stopped thinking for themselves centuries ago. What do you want from me? He asked. I want you to understand what's about to happen. Your reconnaissance fleet is heading toward Proxima Centauri. When you arrive, you're going to find a thriving human colony with 12 million inhabitants. You're going to see cities, orbital habitats, manufacturing centers, and defense platforms. Captain Chen smiled that cold, predatory smile again. Did you think we spent 3 centuries hiding in the shadows doing nothing? We've been preparing, Admiral. Preparing for the day when our psychic shields failed and the Galactic Council remembered. We existed. She pressed another control, and the holographic display changed to show ship schematics. Admiral Zixthon stared in growing horror at designs that were decades ahead of anything in the Council fleet. Quantum tunneling drives, plasma weapons that can crack a moon, defensive shields that can deflect a supernova, and those are just our older designs. How many ships do you have? Enough, Admiral. More than enough. Admiral Zixthon felt the weight of impending catastrophe settling on his shoulders. Captain Chen, if what you're telling me is true, then first contact with humanity could mean war. Total war. The kind that ends civilizations and turns star systems into graveyards. She leaned back in her chair. Unless what? Unless you turn your fleet around right now and go back to Council space. Forget you ever saw this region. Forget humans exist. Go back to your comfortable ignorance and let us continue to hide in the shadows. Admiral Zixthon was quiet for a long moment, thinking furiously. Finally, he spoke. Captain, I have to ask. If your technology is so advanced, if your ships are so powerful, why are you still hiding? Why not reveal yourselves and demand a place at the galactic table? Captain Chen was quiet for an even longer moment. When she finally answered, her voice was soft and sad. Because we remember what we used to be, Admiral. Before the Tau Ceti massacre, humans were explorers, scientists, artists, dreamers. We built cities that touched the sky and wrote music that could make you weep. We asked questions about the universe and actually cared about the answers. She gestured toward the viewport, where the dark shape of the human ship hung in space like a shadow. Look at us now. We build weapons instead of cities. We hide instead of explore. We've become exactly what we need to be to survive in your galaxy, but it's not what we want to be. Then change it. You have the power. Do we? Really? Captain. Chen stood up and walked to the viewport. Admiral, your Galactic Council controls 40,000 star systems. Even with our advanced technology, we're vastly outnumbered. If we reveal ourselves, if we go to war, we might win some battles, we might even win the war. But the cost... She turned back to face him. How many billions would die, Admiral? How many entire species would be wiped out? How many civilizations would burn before it was over? Admiral Zixthon realized he was looking at something he had never encountered before in his long military career. An enemy with the power to destroy him, who chose not to use it. It was terrifying. What if there was another way? He asked slowly. Such as? What if the Council could be changed, reformed? What if there was a way to create a truly voluntary galactic community? Captain Chen studied his face carefully. That would require someone with significant influence in the Council, someone willing to risk everything to challenge thousands of years of tradition. Someone like a High Admiral who had just discovered a species so advanced that war with them would mean the end of galactic civilization as we know it. Hypothetically speaking, yes. Admiral Zixthan made his second decision that would change galactic history. Captain Chen, I need to show you something. Something that might change how you see the Galactic Council. Chapter 4. The Council of Shadows. Admiral Zixthan's shuttle bay was a bustle of activity as Captain Chen's small diplomatic party boarded the Galactic Council flagship. Dr. Reeves had insisted on accompanying her, along with Commander Vasquez and 2 other officers. They wore their dress uniforms and sidearms, looking every inch the representatives of a stellar power, which Admiral Zixthan was beginning to realize was exactly what they were. I have to admit, he said, as he led them through the corridors of the Dominion's edge. This is not how I expected this day to go. How so? Captain Chen asked. When we left Council space, I thought we were investigating an anomaly, a gap in our maps. I never imagined we would discover an entire civilization that's been hiding in our backyard for 3 centuries. They passed through several security checkpoints, each one requiring Admiral Zixthan's personal authorization. Captain Chen noted the placement of guard posts, the locations of weapon lockers, and the general layout of the ship with the trained eye of someone who might need to fight her way out. Your security is impressive, she commented. Necessary. There are species within the Council who would be happy to see the Veltar lose their position of leadership, but they don't openly rebel? Admiral Zixthan paused at that. No, they don't. Which is interesting now that I think about it. They entered a secure conference room where Commander Krelix and Captain Morden were waiting. Both officers stared openly at the humans, clearly struggling to process what they were seeing. Commanders, Admiral Zixthan said, allow me to present Captain Sarah Chen and her officers from the Human Federation. Dr. Reeves stepped forward with a slight bow. Actually, we prefer the term Human Alliance. Federation has some unfortunate connotations in our history. Commander Krelix's crystalline form pulsed with curiosity. Fascinating. Your species shows remarkable diversity in physical characteristics, yet you function as a cohesive unit. How do you manage intersubspecies? Coordination? Captain Chen blinked in surprise. We're all the same species, Commander. These are just natural variations within the human genome. Impossible. Our xenobiological studies show that species with such diverse physical traits inevitably fragment into competing subspecies. It's a fundamental law of evolutionary development. Dr. Reeves and Captain Chen exchanged glances. There was clearly a lot the Galactic Council didn't understand about human biology and society. Perhaps we could discuss xenobiology later, Admiral Zixthan interjected. Right now, I want to show our guests something that might be relevant to our larger conversation. He activated the room's holographic display, but instead of showing star maps or ship schematics, it showed historical documents, ancient records written in a dozen different alien scripts. These are the founding documents of the Galactic Council, he said. Most Council citizens have never seen them. Most Council officers don't even know they exist. Captain Chen studied the holographic documents floating in the air around them. Even translated into English, they were dense with legal terminology and bureaucratic language. What am I looking at? She asked. The original Charter of the Galactic Council, written 4,000 years ago by the first alliance of spacefaring species. Admiral Zixthan manipulated the display to highlight specific sections. Look at this passage. Captain Chen read aloud. The Galactic Council shall exist to promote peaceful cooperation among all sentient species, to facilitate the sharing of knowledge and resources, and to protect the weak from exploitation by the strong. And this one, Admiral Zixthan continued, highlighting another section. No species shall be compelled to join the Council against their will, nor shall any species be denied the right to self-governance within their own territory. The humans stared at the documents in amazement. Commander Vasquez was the first to speak. This isn't how the Council operates now. No, it's not. Admiral Zixthan's voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of our founding principles. The Council became an empire, dedicated to expansion and control rather than cooperation and protection. Captain Morden shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Admiral, with respect, perhaps we should discuss this matter privately. No. Admiral, Zixthan's voice cut through the objection. For too long we've discussed these matters privately while entire civilizations burned. Captain Chen, what would it take for humanity to consider joining the Council? Not as subjects or conquered peoples, but as equal partners? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her words carefully. Fundamental reform, she said finally. Complete restructuring of the Council's government, military, and expansion policies. Recognition of existing territorial boundaries. Reparations for species that have been harmed by past Council actions. And absolute guarantees that no species will ever again be forced to choose between subjugation and extermination. Captain Morden snorted. Impossible. The High Council would never agree to such terms. Then the High Council needs to understand the alternative, Admiral Zixthan said quietly. He activated another section of the holographic display, showing fleet deployment charts and resource allocation reports. This is the current state of Council military forces. We have approximately 12,000 major warships spread across 40,000 star systems. We're powerful, but we're also stretched thin. He changed the display to show intelligence estimates of human military capabilities based on what they had observed of the Defiant. Based on preliminary analysis of human technology, we estimate that humanity could field a force equivalent to our entire navy with perhaps... How many ships, Captain Chen? Captain Chen smiled, that cold smile again. I'm not at liberty to discuss specific numbers, Admiral. But let's just say that if the Council forced us into open war, it would be a very short conflict. And the casualties would be measured in the trillions. The room fell silent. Even Captain Morden, warrior though he was, seemed shaken by the implications. Commander Krellick spoke up, her voice carrying a strange harmonic resonance. There's something I don't understand. If humanity has this level of technological superiority, why haven't you already conquered the galaxy? Why hide it all? Dr. Reeves answered this time. Because conquest was never our goal, Commander. We just want to exist, to explore, to learn, to grow as a species. But the galaxy you've created doesn't allow for that. It's either conquer or be. Conquered, rule, or be ruled. So you chose a third option, Admiral Zixthan said. You chose to disappear. It seemed like the wisest course at the time. But wisdom and necessity aren't always the same thing. Admiral Zixthan felt pieces of an enormous puzzle falling into place. The disappearing ships, the officers who vanished from our records, they found you, didn't they? Captain Chen nodded. Over the past 3 centuries, several hundred council bear. Ships have strayed into human space, some by accident, some deliberately. We couldn't let them return and report what they'd seen, so you captured them. We offered them a choice. Return to council space with their memories modified or stay with us and help build something better. How many chose to stay? More than you might think. It turns out that a lot of council citizens are tired of living in an empire built on conquest and oppression. Admiral Zixthan absorbed this information slowly. Hundreds of his people living freely in human space. Citizens who had chosen exile over complicity in the council's crimes. I want to meet them, he said. Captain Chen studied his face carefully. That could be arranged. But first I need to know something, Admiral. When you go back to the High Council, what are you going to tell them? The truth. That we've discovered a species so advanced that war with them would mean the end of our civilization. That our only choice is to reform the Council according to its original charter, or watch it burn in the fires of a war we cannot win. And if they refuse? Admiral Zixthan was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke with the voice of someone who had just made the hardest decision of his life. Then I'll resign my commission and join the hundreds of other council citizens who've chosen to build something better. Captain Chen smiled, and for the first time since they'd met, it was a genuinely warm expression. In that case, Admiral, welcome to the revolution. Epilogue: The New Dawn. 6 months later. The emergency session of the Galactic High Council was the largest gathering of alien dignitaries in recorded history. Representatives from all 47 member species filled the massive amphitheater on the Council homeworld, their voices creating a cacophony that could have been heard from orbit. Admiral Zixton, now former Admiral Zixton, stood at the central podium, waiting for silence. Behind him, a holographic display showed the reformed charter of the Galactic Council, rewritten according to its original principles and incorporating new provisions for species rights and self-determination. "Honored representatives," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic system. "6 months ago I brought you a choice: reform or face extinction at the hands of a species whose existence we had forgotten, but who had not forgotten us." In the gallery reserved for observers, Captain Chen sat with a small delegation of human representatives. After months of careful negotiation, humanity had agreed to serve as mediators in the Council's transition from empire to true democratic alliance. "Today," Zixthon continued, "I'm pleased to announce that 38 of our 47 member species have voted to accept the new charter. The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun." The chamber erupted in cheers from some sections and angry shouts from others. The 9 species that had voted against reform, primarily military powers who benefited from the old system, were already making threats of secession. But that was expected. Change was never easy, and some would fight it to the bitter end. Hi, Councillor Thexvar of the ruling Veltar faction stood to address the assembly. "The Council recognizes the delegation from the Human Alliance, who have agreed to serve as observers and advisors during our transition period." Captain Chen rose from her seat in the gallery. "Thank you, High Counselor. On behalf of humanity, I want to say that we're honored to be part of this historic transformation. The galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." She paused, looking out over the assembled representatives of dozens of alien species. "But I also want to issue a warning. The old ways die hard. There will be those who try to return to the paths of conquest and oppression. When they do, they'll discover that the galaxy has changed, that there are those who will stand against tyranny, no matter what form it takes." In the months that followed, that warning would prove prophetic. The 9 species that rejected the new charter would form their own alliance, declaring war on the Reformed Council and its human allies. It would be a short war. The first battle took place in the Rigel system, where a breakaway fleet of 200 warships met a combined force of Reformed Council vessels and Human Alliance defenders. The battle lasted exactly 14 minutes. When it was over, the breakaway fleet had been completely disabled, not destroyed, as their crews were allowed to surrender and return home. But their ship's weapons had been permanently fused into slag by human plasma technology, and their engines had been fitted with quantum limiters that would prevent them from ever again leaving their home systems without Council approval. It was a demonstration of power tempered by mercy. A message that said, "We could have destroyed you, but we chose not to." The message was received loud and clear. Within a year, 8 of the 9 breakaway species had petitioned to rejoin the Reformed Council. The 9th, a particularly aggressive warrior culture called the Zakthul, chose instead to retreat to the Galactic Rim, where they established a small empire of their own and were never heard from again. Some said they had learned their lesson and become peaceful. Others whispered that they had encountered something in the dark spaces between galaxies that had taught them the true meaning of fear. But those were stories for another time. 2 years after the Battle of Rigel, Captain Chen stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest contribution to galactic civilization, New Geneva Station, a massive diplomatic complex located at the intersection of human, reformed council, and neutral space. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going. Traders, diplomats, scientists, and explorers working together to build something that had never existed before in galactic history. A Trucon, interstellar community. Impressive, isn't it? Chen turned to see Zixthan approaching, his serpentine form moving with the easy grace of someone who had found peace with his choices. He now served as the first Director General of the reformed Galactic Council, a position that made him effectively the most powerful being in known space. "It is," she agreed. "Sometimes I can hardly believe we pulled it off." "You sound like you're having doubts." Chen was quiet for a moment, watching a human merchant vessel dock alongside a Threndai science ship. "Not doubts, exactly, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to decide that the old ways were better after all. There will always be those who prefer the certainty of oppression to the uncertainty of freedom," Zixthan said. "But look around you, Sarah. Look at what we've built." She did look. In the 2 years since the Reformation, the Council had established universities on a dozen worlds, opened trade routes that benefited everyone instead of just the powerful, and begun the long process of repairing the damage done by millennia of imperial expansion. Most importantly, they had established the Exploration Initiative, a joint human council program dedicated to pushing the boundaries of known space, not to conquer new worlds, but to discover new wonders. The Long Range. "Exploration fleet is ready to depart," Zixthan said. "Captain Morrison reports that all systems are nominal." Chen smiled. Captain Jack Morrison was one of humanity's most experienced deep space explorers, and his ship, Magellan, was equipped with the most advanced sensor and communication equipment both species could provide. "Where are they headed first?" "The Andromeda Galaxy. We want to see if there are others out there like us, other species that chose cooperation over conquest. And if there aren't, then we'll be the first. We'll show them that there's a better way." Through the viewport they watched as the Magellan and its escort fleet engaged their quantum tunnel drives and disappeared into the void between galaxies. Behind them, they left a civilization that had learned to choose hope over fear, cooperation over conquest, and growth over domination. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. There would always be challenges, conflicts, and those who preferred the old ways. But for the first time in galactic history, there was something else as well. There was hope. Personal log of Captain Sarah Chen, Human Alliance. Date: Standard Galactic Calendar, 2392-56. It's been 5 years since first contact with the Reformed Galactic Council. 5 years since we came out of the shadows and took our place among the stars. Sometimes I think about the path not taken. What would have happened if we had remained hidden? If we had continued to live in the silent zone, invisible and forgotten? We would have been safe. But we would also have been alone. Today I received a message from the long-range exploration fleet. They've made contact with a species in the Andromeda Galaxy, the Yathara, a peaceful civilization of energy beings who have been searching for others like themselves for over 10,000 years. They were so excited to discover that they weren't alone in the universe that they cried tears of pure light. The galaxy, galaxies, plural now, are vast and strange and wonderful. Full of dangers, yes, but also full of friends we haven't met yet, wonders we haven't discovered, questions we haven't thought to ask. And for the first time in human history, we're not facing those challenges alone. The silent zone is silent no more. Humanity has found its voice among the stars, and we're using it to sing songs of peace, exploration, and hope. It's a good song. I think we'll keep singing it for a very long time. End log. Final note. The galactic maps no longer stop at human space. They extend outward into the infinite dark, marking not territories to be conquered but wonders to be discovered. And at the edge of every map, in the tradition established by ancient human cartographers, there are 3 simple words that capture the spirit of the New Age. Here be friends. The age of conquest was over, the age of exploration had begun, and the universe would never be the same. The end.